Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ on this Thursday. Time for Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft. The Tennessee Titans, as we know, hold the #1 overall pick, and Titans need a quarterback. It grew more glaring as the season progressed, as Will Levis's production just declined. So the question now is whether Tennessee prefers Miami's quarterback, Cam Ward, or Colorado's Shedeur Sanders at the top of the draft. And in Ryan's latest mock draft, he has Ward actually heading to Tennessee. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders is off to Cleveland with the 2nd overall pick, as he is expected to join the Browns. For much more NFL draft talk, let's go ahead and welcome in Ryan Wilson and our own Rick Spielman to the show to discuss the top 2 quarterbacks. And Rick is also helping to be a part of the search for the next Jets general manager. So, guys, let's start with the choice here for Tennessee and what they have at #1. It seems like the choice is to take a quarterback, but maybe that's not the decision that they're going to go. Rick, what are the conversations inside that Titans facility right now that you're hearing with all the moving parts that are kind of going on right now?
2 things, Jordan. I am doing a head coach search as well. And the other point is I'm in the other building, not the Titans building, so I'm just speculating on what's going to go on. But I imagine right now, because they did let Rand Carthon go on, so they're in the process of putting in a new general manager. I know Chad Brinker is kind of the vice president of football operations, but I imagine that they already have their board initially set. Most teams have their board initially set, but the true process that's going to go on is once they get that general manager in place and get everybody on with Brian Callahan, with Chad Brinker, with the ownership, with the new general manager, whoever that may be, that's when they'll start really diving deep into this quarterback class and see whether it is Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders.
Ryan, you have the Titans drafting a quarterback and making that move. You have them taking Cam Ward ahead of Shedeur Sanders as the first quarterback off the board. Explain why you think he is the best fit there.
Well, Rick and I were at Will Levis's pro day a couple years ago, and we liked Will Levis, but we weren't sure he was going to be the answer at quarterback for whichever team drafted him. He fell out of the first round, and then the Titans took him with the 2nd pick in the 2nd round, and it hasn't worked out. He got benched with about a month ago in the season. And if you need a quarterback, and the Titans appear to need a quarterback, you don't start Mason Rudolph if you don't, and you're choosing between these 2 guys. Cam Ward, for me, is a little bigger, and we'll find out exactly how tall these guys are as we get through the draft process. He has a better arm, and he's a better athlete in space. That's not to say that Shedeur Sanders isn't good at a lot of those things, but he's not as good as Cam Ward when you talk about the physical traits. Cam can certainly play out of structure and off platform, and sometimes, and Rick would agree with this, sometimes too much. In the NFL, though, I think he has the opportunity to improve on getting the ball out on time. We saw him do that the last month or so of the season, and that's something that Will Levis struggled with from day one until the moment he was benched in Tennessee. He's big, strong, fast, big arm, but he just didn't seem to have a sense in the pocket, and that's something Cam Ward does have. But as Rick noted, they got to get the GM situation straightened out, and Brian Callahan's the coach, and they're all going to come to agreement on who this quarterback's going to be. But I would be shocked if they did not get a quarterback in this draft and maybe traded down, for example, and went with a veteran presence, because there's not a lot of veterans to choose from. So that's why I went with Cam Ward. Slightly better than Shedeur Sanders. But, Jordan, we have 105 days to the draft, so we have a lot of time to figure this out.
Yeah, and Ryan, just to follow up with you, this is not a great quarterback class, because if you stack the Cam Ward, you stack Shedeur Sanders, I don't know if they would sure be behind the top 3 quarterbacks that were taken last year. And you could argue with Penix, you can argue with J.J. McCarthy, and you may even argue with Bo Nix, who was the last quarterback taken at the number 12th overall with the Denver Broncos. So if you need a quarterback this year, and I understand you have the 1st round pick, and this is what goes on in those draft rooms, is that, geez, Mason Graham is much better at his position than maybe Cam Ward is his. So you end up forced to take a quarterback, but you're leaving some really good players that are probably better at their position on that draft board. And that's something that the dilemma of a general manager and head coach have to make. So do they need a quarterback? Yes. Can they maybe look at a bridge guy? Can they look at a potential trade? You're going to go through all those scenarios. But if you do end up with Cam Ward, then that's our guy, and let's move forward. But the problem is they're not the best players in this year's draft.
Well, if it is Cam Ward, he will go ahead of Shedeur Sanders, as we mentioned. Let's get to Sanders.
Well, that's in Ryan's model.
In Ryan's model, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And please, let's not put a lot of faith in that. It's early in the process, so let's not make him the guru of the quarterback class this year yet.
105 days to go. A lot can play out, as Ryan Wilson mentioned. Shedeur is going second in Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft to Cleveland. Ryan, just break down why this makes the most sense in your mind here.
Jordan, you have now officially been introduced.
Welcome to the crew.
With Rick Spielman. And here's the thing, Jordan. I think Rick's been so busy with his side hustle there that he misses me, and I miss you too, Rick. I love to hear you give me the business. But in terms of Shedeur Sanders, and look, here's going to be the very first question we're all going to have to ask together, Jordan. Does Shedeur want to go to Cleveland? And that's not a knock against the city of Cleveland. That's a knock against the organization that can't seem to get out of its own way since virtually returning to Cleveland back in 1999. They've had a couple of playoff appearances, but they ran Baker Mayfield off. The Deshaun Watson situation has been an absolute disaster. I love Shedeur Sanders as a football player. There's no one tougher in college football than Shedeur Sanders. He took hit after hit, never complained, got back up, and then made the next play. I think he's one of the best deep ball throwers in college football. Last year, that was Michael Penix Jr., and he is not Michael Penix Jr. in terms of the arm strength and the ability to, with a touch down the field. But look at this. He does a lot of things really well. And like Cam Ward, he sometimes likes to play out of structure and not on time. But when he does do those things and he does get through his reads, he can be a really good football player. Doesn't have the arm strength, probably not as big and certainly not as fast. But if you need a quarterback, he's got the only other guy on the list going in the first round. The only question, as Rick has sort of alluded to, Jordan, is whether you're taking him 1 or 2 or whether he's more likely to fall to the bottom half of the first round, for example.
Ryan, I don't know if he has the luxury of saying that I am that good that I don't want to go to Cleveland, because if he tries to dictate that, and then you look at who's behind him, well, as you go down the draft, you're losing a lot of guaranteed money. The other thing is Ryan Wilson is why he takes so many hits, and I understand some of the offensive line issues, is he holds the ball too long. You can't hold the ball for 22 seconds and then throw the ball. And you see some of these young quarterbacks, and let's take Caleb Williams, for example. He holds the ball too long in the pocket. So what are these quarterbacks and these quarterback handlers, the quarterback coach, the offensive coordinator doing to simplify the read so these guys can play in rhythm and on time? Because what you see when you evaluate these guys coming out, and it was the same thing a little bit with Caleb Williams and all these quarterbacks, is they're not going to have time to hold the ball and wait till the deep shot opens up downfield. They are going to get smashed, and they're getting smashed in college. Imagine what that's going to be like in the NFL. So they have to learn how to play in rhythm. They have to learn how to play on time, and you can't hold the ball, and you can't take the shots that you're taking. So get the ball out of your damn hand, and that's the issue that I think both of these guys have.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that. Well, another team, you guys, with a dire quarterback need are the Giants. And if only there were another top quarterback to choose from. One name that does come to mind is Penn State's quarterback, Drew Aller. But as we know, prior to the college football playoffs, they play in the Orange Bowl tonight against Notre Dame. Drew Aller announced his decision to return to Happy Valley for 2025. However, still time to change that. Deadline for underclassmen to declare for the draft is next Wednesday. With that being said, Ryan, how have NFL scouts been evaluating Aller, who has really taken his game to the next level this season?
Jordan, I'm glad you asked, because Rick and I have talked about Drew Aller throughout the fall, and we both agreed that he should return to school, and I was happy to hear that he did. And I was actually talking to a scout today that said Drew Aller should return to school because he is not a first-round pick. So unless he comes out and throws for 5,000 yards this week and next week and 20 touchdowns and no interceptions and runs like he's Michael Vick, I don't know Look, it only takes one team, but I think he needs to play more football at the college level, because what happens when you get to the NFL is you're basically on your own. It is a job. You're a professional, and you don't have people holding your hands in the sense that they're leading you to do the things you need to do to get better. In college, you have a little bit more of that and a little more leeway to get better against guys that aren't 5 stars at every single position, which is what the NFL ends up being. So I wish him the best. I hope he balls out tonight and balls out next week if Penn State wins, but I think he needs to be in college for 2025 because that would best serve his long-term interests, especially now, and Rick points this out all the time, in the era of NIL. He's going to get paid probably more next year at Penn State than he would if he's, say, a 3rd or 4th round pick in the NFL.
Yeah, Jordan, what we've talked on with the First Pick podcast, and my issue with him is he plays the position right now too mechanical. And by that, what I mean is you can put a couple bolts in his neck and send him to Hollywood and he'd make $1 million as Frankenstein. He needs to loosen up and learn how to play the position. And by doing that, and he showed signs of that in the Boise game. You know, you see him make some deep ball throws. You see him starting to use his unique athletic ability and his unique size to who he's going to be. He's just not ready yet. And if you do take him and if he does come out, you have to sit him at least for a year or maybe 2, because I don't think him or any of these guys are ready to come out and be instant stars or Jaden Daniels of the world in this year's draft class.
All right. Well,
Ryan Wilson, with that outfit, you can put a couple bolts in your neck and head to Hollywood, too. You'd make a great Frankenstein, bud.
Yeah. Well, you're looking like you're right out of a hostage film, Rick Spielman. We don't know where the heck you are at.
Undisclosed location. I cannot tell you where I'm at.
We get it. We'll get it. You can tell us offline. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining me here on CBS Sports HQ. Always a good time. You can get more from Rick and Ryan with the First Pick podcast, all the NFL draft talk you need. Scan that QR code on your screen and watch and listen wherever you get your podcasts.